It's been a delight for me to be here. Oh, you're waving. Good. Great. And it's the right one. It's been a delight to be with you. The main impression I have is I feel at home. I don't know any of you, or very few of you did I know before coming here, but I felt welcomed, loved, and at home. That's all I can say. I felt part of a family. It's as though we've known each other for a long time, and the different people I related to, and that's the joy and the beauty and the miracle of the family of God. And I go back to Egypt enriched and encouraged and blessed, which I needed. I needed the kind of teaching that Ajit gave us the last 2 days. I needed the worship, and I appreciated that most of the worship songs I knew. I often go to places where there are many of the ones I don't know, and I just listen. But this time I was able to sing along and was blessed. I've been asked to say a little bit about how we've been able to work in a context that seems difficult and that seems different in the Middle East. Let's see if it's working. Okay, the Middle East and North Africa is behind me. There's no way I can do justice to all the countries there. I'm going to work about how we're working in Egypt, but just to give you a bit of an overview of these countries. And there are, let's see, okay, there are 22 countries stretching from Mauritania in the west to Oman in the east, and part of it in Africa, part of it in Asia. 323 million people, 300 million of which are Muslims. Arabic language unifies us. Majority of people adhere to Islam. Sizable numbers of Christians in these countries, and I've missed Jordan here. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, Jordan is here. Very different when you think of the countries on North Africa and the Gulf, where there are very few national believers. Very few, and it varies from country to country, but the churches in those countries have a lot of difficulty between being allowed to meet and then not being allowed to meet. So very, very different mood and atmosphere. Then when you go to the other countries where there's been historically a Christian church. So when you think of the Middle East, it's not a monolithic place, and you'll hear different things from different places that can be confusing. It's because it is different. Now, unfortunately, the number of Christians has decreased. You can see the numbers behind me over the years. And that number for Syria is too high. We don't have a figure for Syria now, but we think it's gone down significantly. Maybe down to 5% even, we don't know. And the Christians in Syria are the ones who are suffering the most in the present situation. One word for the wise: don't believe everything you hear about the Middle East, about Syria, about Egypt, about the places. It's highly filtered, not by BBC broadcasters, but by the agencies from which they get their information. I'll give you one example. When 2 of our bookshops were burnt in the south of Egypt, on a day when 80 institutions were burnt at the same time by Muslim Brotherhood sympathizers in 2013, August 2013, three BBC stations phoned me, and what you'd expect them to ask is, why were your bookshops burnt? Who burnt your bookshops? Wouldn't that be the kind of question? The question from the 3 stations, and they were in different parts of Britain, was, why didn't the government protect your bookshop? A very different question. It was to deflect from the perpetrators to the Egyptian government. There were 80 places burned on the same day, in the same morning. There's no way the government could have done anything. We had no idea it would happen. So we couldn't blame the government. You can't be protecting 80 places at the same time. But the question showed that these BBC interviewers were given the wrong questions. They're being manipulated. So it's not that they're being dishonest. It's that they're given skewed information. So much of the information you get from the Middle East is skewed, and you need to dig a bit deeper. I'm going to focus on Egypt because it's considered the main cultural, political, and in a sense, religious center. The head of most Muslims in the world are Sunnis. The head of Sunni Islam is the Sheikh of the Azhar in Egypt. So Egypt is a center of a lot of things. The movie industry is in Egypt, the Arab movie industry. Egyptian serials are very popular. There are movies in other countries, but the Egyptian ones are very popular. So focusing then on within that context, how the Bible Society of Egypt is turning obstacles into opportunities. It's looking at the full half of a glass. It's the ability to be able to, instead of being discouraged by a situation, saying, how can you skirt around it? I want to read this just because that's what we work for at the Bible site. The Word of God is living and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It penetrates even to the dividing of soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of a heart. Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of Him to whom we must give account. It is because of our confidence in the power of God's Word that we at the Bible Society are trying to spread God's Word and encourage people to engage in it. And if we didn't have that confidence, if we didn't believe that God could use His Word to penetrate into the deepest recesses of people's hearts and souls and minds, we'd get very discouraged. It's the work of the Holy Spirit to do that. Our job is to make it available and accessible and affordable. But the work is done by the Holy Spirit. But it's our confidence in the power of the written word, or the heard word, or the seen word, whatever way it's being communicated, that keeps us going. So just that's the background to everything I'll be saying. Now, Egypt is a very ancient country, and some of you have heard about the pyramids. Anybody haven't heard about pyramids? And you've heard about temples. And the reason why you hear about pyramids, which are tombs, there are very few countries where you hear about the burial spot of their king as the most important thing, right? You don't go to England to look for where Henry VIII was buried. At least not too many people do that. But thousands of people, hundreds of thousands, come every year to Egypt and see where the king was buried, because it's quite a remarkable building for the burial spot of one man. It is because of the belief of these people in eternity that these temples and tombs last. Here's a very remarkable boat. It was buried beside the big pyramid in bits and pieces, like an IKEA thing you take home. Unfortunately, they didn't leave the manual. It took archaeologists 20 years to put it together. But it's a remarkable boat. It's extremely big. I wish I had a person standing beside it, but you can see from the ramps and so on how big it is. And it was for the Pharaoh, once he is resurrected, to go on the river of life to eternity. Now, they believed so much in their religion that they would build this boat and bury it with the Pharaoh. It's incredible. Now, many of you have come to Egypt and seen these things, but one thing you haven't seen is the castles of the pharaohs. Egypt was one of the most powerful nations in the world. Ramses II, for instance, ruled for over 60 years. He was a very powerful king. You'd expect him to live in a very opulent, big palace, right? If he's such a big king. Well, you haven't seen palaces of the pharaohs, have you? You go to France to see palaces, you go to England to see castles, but why don't you see palaces in Egypt? Because the ancient Egyptians believed so much in eternity that they only invested in eternity. Their tombs and temples were built in stone that lasted forever. Their palaces and homes were built in mud bricks that did not last. I wonder when someone looks at our generation, if they wonder what we invested in. If this generation invests in eternity the way the ancient Egyptians did. Quite remarkable, their investment in eternity. Now, fast forward from then to where we are now, and you'll see that we have about a bit under 100 million people in Egypt. Let's say 12% of them, 12 million, would be Christians. We don't know. Someone could push a button someday and let us know, because on every ID card of every Egyptian, you have religion recorded. But we have never had an official count of Christians. So this is an estimate. It's probably a correct estimate, but it cannot be verified. And half, or more than half, of all the Christians in the Middle East live in Egypt. Now, what's our challenge? Our challenge is to present God's word in a suitable format at an appropriate price, but within the legal, religious, and political restrictions that we have in Egypt. Now, that's a mouthful, because we do have restrictions. And when I joined the Bible Society, I was given a list of things we couldn't do. It was a very long list. We couldn't open another bank account because our bank account had been opened by the British and Foreign Bible Society in the 19th century, and we couldn't collect donations because we were not an official NGO. We couldn't. But as I began understanding how Egyptian society works, I realized that when you see a closed door, what Egyptians do is they look for a window through which to jump. And fortunately, we found many windows through which to jump. So every one of that long list I received when I took over in 1990, everything we were told we could not do, we found another way to do it. And we've done just about everything we want to do. So for instance, I was told, and I went and met with the responsible people in government and said, what can't I do? He said, you can't give out free scriptures. Now that was a bit disappointing because teams would come from OM and YWAM come to our Cairo International Book Fair, where in those days you had about 2 million people from all over the Arab world coming to a book fair. They'd come with a stack of New Testaments or Bibles and begin giving them out. By the second day, they'd be arrested, the material would be confiscated, they'd be sent back home. And they say, persecution in Egypt, we can't give out Bibles in Egypt. So we in the Bible Society prayed and fought, and we read manuals, and we went to conferences, and we figured out a very ingenious way to overcome this seemingly unovercomable obstacle. So we figured out something that you've never thought of, nobody ever thought of how to give out scriptures in large amounts to people, even though we couldn't And I still get people coming to my office and saying, why don't you fight for your freedom? You should be able to give them out free. I said, why? We sell them at ridiculously low prices and at the book fair. So when these people where 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 Bibles get confiscated, during the same 2 weeks, we sell 7,000 New Testaments at about 10p each, and nobody complains. Because if they come to the Bible Society, pay for their Bible, then there's nothing wrong. And why not? Why not work within that restriction? It's probably, if he pays 10p, maybe he's going to look at it a bit more than if I just give it out to him free. So, it's a matter of attitude, and that's what I say when you get news from Egypt, restrictions and so on, we can't do this. Well, there are other ways to do it. And we sell them everywhere. We have found out that we can sell at all sorts of different places. So all over the country, we have places where we go and we sell our books, and we can do it quite freely. We found that we can only sell our audiovisual materials, of which we are selling millions in the 1990s and the early part of the millennium. We could only sell them from Christian outlets. In those days, there were only about 7 or 8 Christian bookshops in Cairo of all kinds, all denominations, and in Egypt itself there were very few. So it seemed very restrictive. You don't have outlets to sell from. But we figured, why don't we multiply outlets all over the country? And I found out if I rented a book table in a fair, any kind of fair, and I put a sign saying Bible Society, and I paid rent for that book table, ipso facto it became a Christian outlet, right? Because it's got a sign on it, and it's being paid for, so it's a Christian outlet, so I can sell from it. So we go anywhere that they will let us, in clubs, in one of our most successful places was a booth in a gas station between Cairo and Alexandria, and as people were filling up gas and there was a booth selling scriptures in that place. And it became a Christian outlet because we paid rent, and we called it the Bible Society of Egypt. Simple, yes, we don't complain about it. And now, in addition to this, we had free rented bookshops, dingy rented bookshops, and I realized at the time that if we have such a precious book like the Bible, it should be put in a place that is worthy of it. And our dingy bookshops with light bulbs coming down from the ceiling and dusty boxes of Bibles sitting around were not the place to honor God's word. We're next door in a free market enterprise that developed in Egypt after the socialist regime. Everybody was beginning to do things that looked fancy and nice. So a shoe store would have neon lights and would have spotlights and would have marble floors just to display some shoes. And we would have a dingy bookshop. So we began renovating our old free bookshops, and we rented other bookshops so that now we have a chain of 17 attractive bookshops all over the country. Most of them we own. And it's been a wonderful way to have the Bible available in the marketplace on the street. And I can tell you many stories of what that did. And you can see that the bookshops themselves look attractive. And we've tried to make them fit the culture. At first, because I'm a simple lifestyle type person, I was afraid that Christians who would come into a very luxurious looking bookshop, attractive bookshop, would not want to contribute, that we would lose donations, they wouldn't be able to raise money. The opposite exactly happened. They came into the bookshops, they came into our Bible house, and they were proud that the Bible is put with such respect in such a beautiful place, and our donations from Egyptians increased significantly because they felt we were really honoring God's word, made the opposite of what I had believed. So our vision has been to make the Bible accessible and affordable and all that kind of thing, but we wanted people to engage with the scriptures. We focused on children to begin with, and we got the idea of doing children's events. Actually, my staff came along and said, we had a series of videos we had dubbed into Arabic, and they were brilliant videos. Unfortunately, they have not done well in the West. It's called Kingsley's Meadows. It was done by the American Bible Society, and it takes a Bible story, links it with a Bible character, and shares a biblical principle. So it would be Joseph's forgiveness. So you learn about Joseph in all sorts of media. You have a little rinky-dink Sunday school play, and then you have a cartoon, and then you have storytelling, and then you have 2 songs. And by the end of that story, you will have learned about Joseph, but you'll also have learned about forgiveness. Then you learn about Esther and courage. You learn about Abraham and faith. So there were 24 of these values. I remember a mother, and they're mainly for preschool children, a mother came into the Bible site to be complaining once. I said, what's the problem? She said, they're wonderful videos, but I have a problem with my son. I said, what's the problem? She said, he's very stubborn, and whenever I tell him to do something, he does the opposite, and he tells me, instead of calling it Kingsley's, we're calling the friendly lion who tells the stories Kingsley. Egyptians wouldn't understand. We called him Kingo. So in Egypt, it's known as Kingo. He said, my son said, Kingo taught me how to be perseverant. His little boy. Another mother was in the back seat of a taxi, and she heard the taxi driver was cursing and swearing with Cairo traffic, and the little daughter, 3.5-year-old daughter, told her, Mommy, this man doesn't seem to have self-control. So the mother said, how could my kids have learned these values? Anyway, Kingo was very exciting, and even people who weren't Christians were buying Kingo. So my staff said, we want to do Kingo events, and I was against it. I said, to do an event in a church by Bible Society, nobody will show up. We should go to church events. That's when they're successful. Well, my staff overruled me, and you're going to see what happened here. Oops, sorry. Did I say that? Oh, I missed that one. Okay, so we're not allowed to proselytize, but we saw that in the free market enterprise, people advertise. So we imitated every kind of advertising tool that people were using, and you can see here all the ways in which we advertise the scripture. These billboards, we have home delivery, everything that free market enterprises, Pizza Hut, Xerox did, we imitated. We positioned ourselves as a free market enterprise in the country. And when people told us, you're not supposed to do this or that, we'd say, well, we're selling a product that is approved. We get licenses for it. Give me a letter saying I cannot put a billboard up. I can't do this. And people let us do it. And in Egypt, precedent is very important. So once you put up one billboard, then you go to the other advertising agency in the south and say, I want a billboard. They say, no, you're not allowed to put billboards. I say, well, your competitor in the north put up 3 billboards. They say, really? Sure? Oh, we'll do it. And that's the way you do the things in this country. Anyway, let's see why I am here. So our job is to make the Bible available, but we want people to, it ends by saying, that's our mission statement, to effectively apply it. So when my staff started doing these Kingo festivals, I didn't think they would work out. Last year we had 200 of these events with about 300,000 children across the country. You get a feel here for the numbers. The Coptic Orthodox Church is celebrating 100th anniversary of their Sunday school, and they have thousands of children. One Sunday school in an area we just had an event in has 10,000 children on Friday going to Sunday school in one church. And they go all day. They have several buildings, and they have many, many classes. And each 1 hour, all the classes fill, the kids go home, next group comes, and they go until late at night. Incredible number of kids. But they didn't have creative ways. So this has forced us to develop half of what we produce. We have 700 products we sell at the Bible side. We do about 30 new products a year. More than half are designed for children. And we've met a real response in the churches for these events. And it's been very encouraging because unlike what I thought, Kingo has become an event of a church. Like the church wants a Kingo festival, and they get after us to do them, and kids will come. They come on, I could show you dozens of pictures. They come usually on little pickup trucks from the villages, no seat belts or anything, and they're stacked on the back of a pickup truck, and they go home we give out scriptures and things, carrying their scriptures and carrying themselves. Now, we were successful with kids for many, many years, but we were stymied at how to reach out to youth. How can you reach out to young people? One of our staff members said, why don't we do a You've Got Talent show for young people, for teenagers and youth? It sounded strange, but he said, we'll link it to a biblical theme, so as they present their talent, they can present a skit, a poem, they can draw something, they can do something from recycled material. As they present that, they are presenting the biblical message to those who are listening. So it's youth ministering to youth. I'm going to show you a video on that, and then I'll make a little comment, and I'll show you an example after that of a young girl, a 16-year-old girl, who's presenting something. Remember, these are Coptic Orthodox young people. They know nothing about evangelicals. It's a different kind of context, but you can see the vibrance in that thing. Oops. It just got too long. The day starts at 10 in the morning with children's events. So you had Kingo in the morning. And then you have Bible quiz. So different churches. We have work with 100 churches everywhere we go. So each bishopric, each diocese would have about 100 churches. So we work with 100 churches, send out the questionnaire, the quizzes, kids prepare, and then each church sends 4 of its kids to do a Bible quiz and 4 of its kids to do a talent show. And so all day they're competing from the different churches in these quizzes. Now, that probably isn't the impression you have of a Coptic of Orthodox churches. There are no evangelicals there. These are just Orthodox churches. You see the dynamism, even the singing and the vision. And then some Christian businessmen have given us these fantastic gifts. So it's very motivational. The top winners get each a washing machine to take home. I'm going to show you a young woman. This is to show you what God is doing in the lives of. She's 16 years old. She's a woman in southern Egypt from a Coptic church. She has no contact with evangelicals. She's just been brought up in her church. And this is what she decided to give as her talent. We are investing in hundreds of thousands of young people like her. And our vision is that as these people get more committed to Jesus, they will be light and salt where they are. Because when she goes back to her class, where she's studying, she's going to be one of 10%. She's going to be with 90% people who are Muslims in her class. And she will be a light. She's convinced it's going to shine through her. So many people say, what's your strategy to reach the nation? Our strategy to reach the nation is when you're reaching hundreds of thousands of children and young people and encouraging them and challenging them and giving them a sense that they have worth, that they will go and be the light and salt in their community. So we're not talking about 10 people, we're talking about hundreds, 300 competitors at this, thousands of children. So we want you to pray that God will use these wonderful Christian kids to be a real witness in the country. There's hope for the future of Egypt with people like this. And of course, they're getting bolder. If it wasn't for that event, this girl would have never been on a platform, be able to speak. It's a very, what do you call it, a chauvinistic society. It's a society where women don't have much place in the church. But for her to get up, and she was preaching. She was telling them what we do. And here's a young woman, 16, preaching to maybe 2,000 people sitting there. And that will continue. So we provide a platform for women, a platform for young people. We believe lots will happen. Now I'm going to switch moods, but it's this church, it's this vibrancy that is reflected in the Egyptian church. And when on February the 15th, we had that news of these 21 Egyptians decapitated by ISIS in Libya, the president of the country came on national television and declared 8 days of mourning for, he said, my sons. He didn't call them Christians, he called them my sons. Now, when the king of Saudi Arabia had died, we had had 3 days of mourning. For these men who were probably illiterate, menial laborers in Libya, eking out a living to help their families back home, we had, as a nation, 7 days of mourning. So we as a Bible side decided we had to do something. We had to respond. We had to be there. And we met the next morning in the publishing office, and we were wondering what to do. And I saw one of the women who was working with us is Coptic Orthodox. She's in her late 20s. And she was very happy. We were all very depressed, very solemn. It was an awful thing. Some people had seen the decapitation. Most of us hadn't. So it was a very, very sad time. And she was very excited. I said, why are you so excited? She said, because all my life I've been brought up in a church that talks about martyrs, that talks about dying for Jesus, that talks about the sacrifices people have done. And I very much firmly did not believe that anybody in the 21st century would be willing, if given the choice between death and denying Jesus, would choose death. And when I saw these young men looking up to heaven and praying to Jesus, and knowing that they could have just said the Shahada, just said that they believe in Muhammad and Islam, and they would have been saved, I realized that the stories I'd been taught since a young child were true. That the gospel is true. That there are people who are willing to stand for Jesus like they did many years ago, and that's why I'm here. And she was so affirmed in her faith. And she was one of thousands of Christians in Egypt who were affirmed in their faith by the sacrificial death of these men. So we worked that morning about it. I'll just show you, those of you who haven't seen it maybe. Let's see, is it working? Okay, well, it didn't run. This was supposed to be a video of them, but you don't need to see it. Oops. Oh, okay, they're working it for me. You could hear them praying to Jesus. And it was very, very moving. And it's the only video we have. It's about 15 minutes. It's a high-definition video of martyrdom. I don't think in the history of the church we've ever had a martyrdom filmed. But this was very, very powerful. It shook the nation. Muslims in Egypt were very sad and wanted to distance themselves from it. Anyway, we met that morning and we developed this tract based around a poem that someone had written for us, and I'll read it in a minute. We called it Two Rows by the Sea, contrasting the two rows, and the tract is all about the contrast between the row in orange and the row in black. It was Monday when we designed it. Tuesday we sent it to a printer. By Wednesday night, we had 1 million copies printed of that tract. We were able to begin distributing. By Thursday, the beginning of weekend, we had distributed 1.6 million all over the nation. And people were able to give them to their friends, put them in public places, put them in the entrance to their buildings. It had mass impact, mass distribution. The poem also went viral on media and was translated many, many languages. I'm going to read it for you because it's a very moving one. That's just the tract cover. 2 rows of men walked the shore of a sea on a day when the world's tears would run free. 1 row of assassins who thought they did right, the other of innocence, true sons of the light. 1 holding knives in hands held high, the others with hands empty, defenseless and tied. One row of slits to conceal glaring dead eyes, the other with living eyes raised to the skies. And we think of Stephen. One row stood steady, pallbearers of death, the other knelt ready, welcoming heaven's breath. One row spewed wretched, contemptible threats, the other spread God-given peace and rest. A question, who fears the other? The row in orange watching paradise open, or the row in black with minds evil and broken? That tract and that poem impacted the nation and impacted the world to remind us again that the word in the New Testament of martyr is the same word as witness. So in their death, these men impacted the nation. The Prime Minister went to their home, sat on the ground, and he spoke to one of the mothers of these boys, and the mother said, "If my son had denied Jesus, I would have killed him myself." We've had a couple of other incidents, and in a church, and then on Palm Sunday, in another, sorry, I need to go back. People were killed. The guard of that church, the church of Palm Sunday, saw the man coming in. There were two suicide bombers, and one coming in, he grabbed him before he got into the church, and he was blown up. So a very well-known anchorman in Egypt had the wife and the sons of that guard interviewed. I want you to watch the face of that anchorman. He's a Muslim. He's a leading Muslim anchorman as they are telling the story of what happened. So, was Stephen's martyrdom a waste? I met a Scottish man who in his wallet had a card with the name of one of the men in Libya who was killed. I said, "What do you do with that card? The man is in heaven. He's dead. Do you pray for him?" He said, "No, I don't pray for him. I pray for his assassin." And he said, "There were a group of us praying for the assassins of each of these men who were killed." So like Paul, who was standing there, that they may come to faith. So pray for Egypt. Pray for the church in Egypt, and pray for the impact that simple people just dying for Jesus has had on the whole nation, and genuine forgiveness and care has impacted the whole nation.